going to start a new project, and the material I'm using is this rock here. So this is a piece of Hydrogrossular Garnet. Here's the slice then. You can already see just under normal interior room lighting conditions, you can kind of see a bit of transparency already. If I bring the torch over now, and there you can see it. It glows beautifully. For this project, we're going to be making the Hei Toki out of this slice of this beautiful Hydrogrossular Garnet from New Zealand. The first phase of the project then is to consider the shape of the piece. So I've decided that the base will be here. That will be the top of the toki, so it'll hang from the top to the bottom like this. What I've got to do is I've got to grind out basically a straight edge here and a straight edge there. I've carved out or ground out the basic shape. You can see I've got the blade down the bottom there. I've gone for a very thick blade because the piece itself is so chunky and thick. It doesn't really make sense to have a really thin, sharp blade there, in my opinion. At the end of this initial shaping phase, I spent some time with diamond powder, or diamond paste, bringing up the first polish. Now, the only reason I polish it so early is not to actually give it its finish, but it really helps finding the scratches. So you can see those sort of curved, elongated lines. They show up far better under a polish than they do when it's still sort of whitish and under its matte conditions. Here comes the torch. So up the top here, you can see there's almost no translucency in that section there. And that's because where we've got this thicker, darker, whiter material. That's kind of the rind of the stone, and that's why it's also at the top of the toki, because the binding is going to cover that later anyway. And then as we progress down through the stone, you can see this amazing color. I mean, this is just beautiful. It's a white LED torch, so the color's not coming from the torch. That stone is just ridiculous. Righty, we are getting close to the end of this now. The last stage was up to 600 diamond grit and then putting some smoothing and polishing on it once again so I can check scratches. We'll do that in a second. Those are the scratches still from the lower grits of the diamond scouring pads or the diamond lap discs. So what I need to do now is I need to spend a lot of time on about a 1200 grit, so a pretty fine grit, and I've just got to work the surface until I can get those scratches out. There's a very big scratch about here where my finger is tapping. I'll try and get it in the light again. So that's what I'm going to try and get rid of. That's going to take a long time. So that's what's going to happen now is scratch removal, then it'll go to final polish. So final smoothing and final polish up to 15,000 or maybe 30,000 grit. And then I'll do the binding and it will be done. So there we go. I guess the only thing I'll have to do is maybe name this thing because it's such a chunky individual piece. It probably deserves its own name. The toki is now finished. Here's the final piece. I've bound it to the cord at the top there. I actually had to take quite a bit more off the top, about 1 centimetre, because the angle wasn't supporting the lashing. It was too narrow and steep. So I had to take 1 centimetre off the top and just flatten out the top angle a bit. So the toki's not as long as it was, but it's looking pretty good. The lashing and the binding I'm pretty happy with. There's the back. So I'll try and get it to catch some of the light now so we can see the polish. The scratches are basically gone. That big scratch that was down here is gone. There's a few very tiny scratches still just floating about, but I'm pretty happy with it's turned out. You can sort of see the slightly bit of orange peeling that kind of comes through. That's just because the stone isn't all exactly the same material. There is chlorite, I think, in the stone, which is what's giving it its green colour, and that's just slightly softer than the garnet, so I think that's why it's just not perfectly flat there, but it's got a really high reflective amount there with all the polish that we put on, going up to 30,000 grit. Now that we've got the really high finish on it, we also get lots of light that'll go through the piece. So it's not daylight here. This is actually a nighttime recording. So there's the torch coming on the back, and you can see then just a huge amount of light is going straight through the toki. If I put my finger there, you can see the finger through the stone. You can see my finger moving backwards and forwards in front of the torch. So a huge amount of light coming through, and it gives it that beautiful glowing green colour. I may throw in a shot against the sunlight if tomorrow's a sunny day and I can finish the video with that. There we go. There is, of course, this is quite a bright torch. There's the final piece. I'm very happy with the way this has turned out, and looking forward to finding out who ends up owning and wearing this lovely Hydrogrossular Garnet Hei Toki.